What happens when you put creativity, innovation, and regenerative principles together? Unlimited possibilities on how we can recreate a world where people thrive with one another and the environment. The Regenerating a Creative Future program was created by the collective vision of Lonali Rodrigo and Rondula de Silva and brought to life by the British Council in collaboration with Good Life X to shine a light on creatives and innovators who are working on solutions in the regenerative and circular economies. From projects in agriculture and wellness, sustainable innovation, architecture, circular and sustainable design, upcycled fashion, music, performance art, and so much more. This program brought together a multidisciplinary group of people across diverse sectors to disrupt silos and connect the dots to create a sustainable, circular, and regenerative future together. The program kicked off with a 5-part conversation series, where we heard from industry leaders from various sectors and across multiple generations, locations, and lived experiences. New lexicons were explored during the sessions to better define and open up the conversation around the language used within these models. Through these definitions, we seek to increase awareness and draw from inherent sustainable practices across the Sri Lankan creative and innovation sector. By live streaming across Zoom and Facebook Live, and with simultaneous interpretations in 2 local languages, we expanded opportunities for anyone to plug into these regenerative models of building the economy. The first conversation was focused on technology in the creative and circular economies. We explored how the use of technology builds and connects new opportunities in emerging economies, with a focus on the creative and circular economy. The conversation then focused on the word circular as a lexicon, where the speakers unpacked how the word circular connects to the various practices here in Sri Lanka and the future of circularity in its work.
I think in Sri Lanka and in many developing countries, there's a misconception. We think that circularity is all about recycling, but circular economy is actually much more than recycling. I think it's all the steps, all the measures that we take to move away from the traditional take, make, dispose model. It's all the little steps, it's everything that we do to close the loop.
And then sustainability is kind of the toughest one because it's a holistic overview of all 3 really. So seeing how you can make sure that your resources last you as long as possible through good product design and good implementation of circular economy.
In the second session, we discussed how circular economy-centric sustainability, architecture, and differing cultural dynamics play a role in the urbanization and development of Sri Lanka, and we question if there is a way to build Sri Lanka sustainably. Biomimicry was the lexicon of this session, where we explored how imitating design structures of nature can help solve human problems.
So the term we are more familiar with, and the term we officially use to describe the kind of designs we do, is called biointegrated, where we want to highlight the importance of integrating the biology within the functionality of everything we design.
I think a lot of the answers come from the past. These are systems which have been practiced for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and therefore they must work. And
unless we push for it, unless we as citizens, unless we as users, as the public, unless we push for it, that kind of change is not going to come. And we don't need to see ourselves as experts. We don't need to be planners or architects. We are the people who are the beneficiaries of these master plans. And
the third part of the conversation series focused on how the younger generation views system change for the future and how we can best support them to empower this change. The speakers looked at the lexicon of lateral to see how young individuals from different industries define and carve out space for them in Sri Lankan culture.
I think what's important is to bring these younger perspectives on system change and the creativity element, because sometimes I feel that folks who have been at it for many, many years tend to perhaps be jaded, and they might have blind spots in seeing what's truly possible.
In general, the way that change is going to happen is through this these radical systems, because it's something completely new that can really change what we're doing. And
systemic change can occur if we take on individual actions if a lot of us collectively do that, we could cause systemic change from the outside of the system.
Conversation number 4, question if the systems of intercultural dynamics, collaboration, dialogue, co-design faith, and identity help to build more inclusive, creative, and sustainable economies. The lexicon of creative industries was discussed so we could hear from leading practitioners on how creative industries can be amplified and recognized more here in Sri Lanka.
These conversations happen outside of the design sector, for example. You know, we can't just live in this bubble of like designers speaking to designers, and that's the only space we exist in. We have to speak to farmers, we have to speak to agriculturalists, we have to speak to, because that's where like the textiles actually originate from.
And so we've learned just from trying to work collectively or collaboratively that this idea of translating in itself is not really what's enough. Like, I think as artists, we have the privilege of being able to attempt to transcend language, right?
Jalendra, there are lots of people from away from Jaffna or away from Sri Lanka. They don't have lots of connection between the local people. So the aim of this program is making or introducing the broader way of artists, those who are speaking Tamil or related to Tamil society or Jaffna society.
The final conversation in the series, one of the most popular topics, discussed how corporate social responsibility is a limiting factor to creating net positive impact. The speakers focused on the industrial drivers and barriers to adopting regenerative practices and the challenges of scale across various sectors. Greenwashing was a star-studded lexicon of this conversation.
I see, and I'm not talking about LVMH now, but I see in different brands, in particular in fashion, where you have a CSR team somewhere not really talking to the design team. You know, you have different teams that have evolved with different visions, different targets, different skill sets. And I think we need more bridging. We need to decentralize this notion of accountability. But we also need to go beyond being accountable to us humans. You know, how are we accountable to rivers? How we are accountable to that, to that mountain? How are we accountable to other species? And I think currently CSR strategies, wherever I look, are still anthropocentric, human-centric. So is design.
Being very frank, we also went in with a slight savior kind of mentality in there. No, with this kind of ideas and aspirations that look here, going and telling them to these craft communities, we see the potential, come on board with us and let's do this together and we can help save your economy. But once you start working with them, once you start really sitting down, understanding the craft, the culture, the community, you're really humbled. I mean, it's a very humbling experience.
Following the conversation series, we dove straight into the creative residency with the 10 selected creative innovators in a cozy location tucked away in the southern coast of Sri Lanka, Ahangama. The residents were a mix of creatives, entrepreneurs, and innovators working on projects in ceramics, architecture, upcycled fashion and materials, technology, NFTs, and so much more. With our team of experts, the residents learned about principles in circularity, sustainability, design thinking, and prototyping as a foundation on which their experiences during the residency could be built upon. Once the residents arrived at the Co-Live Ahangama property, they unpacked and settled in. As a first exercise of the residency, they were asked to set their intentions and expectations for the week, to look around the room of talented individuals and see the endless possibilities of collaboration and inspiration. In the evening, the residents were taken through a workshop on sustainability from expert Lonali Rodrigo of House of Lonali, building the foundation of sustainable principles. Lonali took insights from her expansive knowledge, practices used in her brand, and showed the residents how they can reimagine sustainable models in their own work. The residents were then faced with their first challenge of the week. Through steady observations by the GLX team, each of the 10 residents were placed into 2 teams for the week. The purpose of breaking the residents into teams was to focus on working together on the tasks of the residency and finding solutions collaboratively. The first challenge for the 2 teams was a dinner challenge, to work with an allocated amount of ingredients to cook a meal for the entire group. The first team took to the kitchen to wrap up day 1 with an incredible meal enjoyed by all. To start off the morning, Ismail, co-founder of CoLive, led the residents through a workshop on circularity. He explained how to integrate circular systems, models, and design strategies into our everyday lives and into our work. Following the circularity workshop, residents prepared for a workshop on systems and design thinking with Mayun, where he took them through various exercises to organize their thoughts and ideas into thoughtful action plans and designs. The residents wrapped up a day packed with insightful learnings and enjoyed a fantastic dinner prepared by the second team. Our most eventful day of the residency occurred on day 3, where the residents ventured outside the CoLive property and into the sunny southern coastal town of Ahangama to meet with local artisans and entrepreneurs. The goal of the day was to gain insight from the locals and to collect materials and resources for their final projects. Mayun, our design thinking expert, prepped the residents on how to use the most of the environment around them and how to apply the learned design thinking mindset to get the most out of the artisans and entrepreneurs that they spoke with. Once the 3-wheelers were loaded, it was off on the expedition. The group split up into their selected agenda of locations to visit for the day. All residents started off at the Hope Market, run by Anurangi and Ismail of CoLive. They saw a live demonstration of Biralu lace by Sunetra. They then headed off to the Thalpe Recycling Center, Herman Tea Estate, Sukesha Ayurvedic Hair Oils, a ceramic and pottery studio, a cane store, a handloom studio. After a full day of expedition, the residents ended the day at Tracks Ahangama, a music venue and cafe, for a debrief session of the day. We heard a few words from Ravi, the owner of Tracks.
And I think it's a very interesting time for us now with the government and this change coming. And it's nice to see young people work together because obviously old people couldn't work together. That's why we're interested.
Staying nearby to CoLive was Manu, an Italian who has spent the last few months living in Sri Lanka. He cooked us all a wonderful, hearty Italian meal to cap off the night back at Koliv. On day 4 of the residency, the teams began to ideate and construct their project prototypes. Mayun kicked off the morning with a debrief of the expedition day, gathering insights from each of the residents on their biggest takeaways from the past 3 days and how they were individually impacted. The two teams broke off into their own spaces to speak with each other and find parallels amongst their learnings. For their prototypes, the teams took a look at the materials that they collected and purchased and how they can utilize them to visualize their hopes for a more regenerative and creative future. After 3 full days of workshops, exploration, and conversations, the team spent the day at Koliv working within their teams to ideate, plan, and construct their project prototypes. On the final day of the creative residency, the team prepped for the arrival of our guests, many of the individuals who came together to make this residency happen. Randula and Lonali kicked off the open day with a few words on why we chose to construct this program and what we hope to accomplish beyond it. We heard from both teams on their solutions and learnings and where they hope to contribute to the regenerative, creative, and entrepreneurial economies. Maria Rehman, the country director of British Council, shared her words of encouragement for our residents and for anyone plugging into the creative economy. Manika Vanderputten, the arts manager for British Council, followed up by sharing her enthusiasm and insights from the entire program. After wrapping up the presentations, it was time for everyone to enjoy a week of hard work and strong connections made. The Regenerating a Creative Future program was the first of its kind here in Sri Lanka. Through this curated program, we were able to create conversations and a space for individuals to plug in and learn from each other to ideate solutions for a future here in this island and beyond.